Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to join before I get started with this live stream. And while we wait, I just want to encourage people to follow me on Twitter at NewPosBlog. I also want to encourage people to follow me on Facebook at New Possibilities. You can like my page. And lastly, I want to encourage people to follow our book club, Reading as Activism, on Facebook. You can search under the name Reading as Activism and follow and like our page. Each month, we read a different book about the Black experience written by Black authors throughout the diaspora. So I encourage you all to like our page. And again, it's the last Saturday of each month. We discuss a book. We will be announcing our next book shortly. So I see that I have someone watching this live stream now. Please let me know if the audio is fine. If everything's fine, if you can throw a 7 in the chat, I would appreciate it because I want to make sure that the audio is coming through loud and clear and that there's no buffering before I continue with this live stream. So I see that we have a few people here. So if you can let me know by throwing a 7 in the chat that everything is fine with the audio, I would appreciate it. I know that there's a delay, but if you can just let me know, throw a 7 in the chat if everything is fine with the audio. Okay, so I see a couple of 7s in the chat. I appreciate it. So there's a wide range of things that I want to talk about tonight, but I'm going to focus on this Breonna Taylor case and the responses that I heard from Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal. Also, I was watching a video here on YouTube that Hassan Campbell did, and I want to respond to his video. I'm going to play the audio of his video later, and what I will do is I will provide my commentary as I take pauses during part of his audio. So I'm going to start off with the things that Charles Barkley had to say about Breonna Taylor. So let me share my screen real quick. So you have this article from the Daily Mail, and I meant to do this a while ago. I just been so busy, I haven't had time to get to this as promptly as I would like. So if you can just bear with me a second, we can get right into it. So this article is about Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal. As you all know, they're basketball stars. You know, they have since retired, but they're legends in the game. And basically, you had Charles Barkley suggesting that the situation involving Breonna Taylor is different from the George Floyd situation and the Ahmaud Arbery situation. So I want to read a couple of quotes from this particular interview that, it was actually on the sports program, and Charles Barkley made some statements and Shaquille O'Neal backed those statements up. So I'm going to read some of those statements and then provide my commentary. So this is what Charles Barkley had to say. He said, "I don't think this one was like George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery and things like that. I feel sad that this young lady lost her life, but I think that the no-knock warrant is something we need to get rid of across the board. But we have to take into account that her boyfriend shot at the cops and shot a cop." And then it goes on to say, Shaquille O'Neal agreed and argued that the officers involved were simply doing their job on a warrant signed by a judge. He also said that he believed that the system needed to change. So before I get into what they had to say, fully respond to what they had to say. I will say this. Initially, I was like, let me go all the way in on these guys, go onto my I Declare War channel. But as I read what they had to say, I think that what they're saying is rooted in ignorance. It's not necessarily like some kind of deliberate disrespect of Breonna Taylor. So for that reason, I'm just going to respond to the points that they raised step by step. So let me see if I can get into the other statements that were made. So I think that, yeah, this is from Shaquille O'Neal right here. You have to get a warrant signed, and in some states do allow no-knock warrants. Everybody's been asking for murder charges, he said. When you talk about murder, you have to show intent. A homicide occurred, and we're sorry that a homicide occurred. And then he goes on to say this: when you have a warrant signed by a judge, you are doing your job. And I would imagine that you would fire back. And then this goes on to talk about how Shaquille O'Neal worked with the Florida County Sheriff's Office. But it says that it's not clear what his duties entailed. So he did have some law enforcement roles, and it also talks about other law enforcement roles that he may have played. So those are their statements, and what I want to do is first respond to this whole thing that this situation is different from Breonna Taylor. I mean, different from George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. So let me stop sharing. Well, I'll statements while I'm responding to their statements. So this situation, just like most police brutality cases, they happen under different circumstances. Of course, this situation is different. This is a different set of facts, but that doesn't mean that this situation is different in terms of the demand for justice. Now, of course, the facts are different. In this case involving Breonna Taylor, the police were executing a no-knock warrant. So you have that on one hand. In these other situations, it wasn't that. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, this is a case of police brutality, similar, just based on that, just based on the fact that you have police exercising excessive force. Because here you have a situation where, first of all, this warrant was issued under suspicious circumstances. Here they are claiming that this woman was a part of some drug operation, and there's no proof that she was a part of any drug operation. They didn't find any drugs there. They didn't find anything illegal going on in that apartment. So that raises questions about whether or not this warrant should have been issued in the first place. The second thing is this. This was a no-knock warrant. And according to many of the witnesses, these officers did not identify themselves. They didn't say that they were police. They were in plain clothes, according to many of the witnesses. Now, there is one witness who claims that the police identified themselves, but there was evidence that this same witness said something else earlier before he or she changed their statement later. So you have a situation where most of the people are saying that these officers did not identify themselves. You have Brianna's boyfriend saying that these officers did not identify themselves. So if you have some people barging into your house late at night, not identifying themselves, not dressed in any kind of distinguishing police uniform or anything like that, just barging into your house, you are going to do what comes natural. You are going to defend yourself and your family. And that's what this brother attempted to do. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend attempted to defend himself. Um, so he was responding to a threat. He fired at the police officers because he didn't know who these people were. They could have been anybody. So that's one thing. The other thing is this. There has been some dispute about whether or not Breonna Taylor's boyfriend actually shot the police officer. Despite what this attorney general is talking about, there's a dispute as to whether or not this brother shot the police officer. There's a report, and I'm going to show it right now, that contradicts, this article right here talks about how a report contradicts what the Kentucky Attorney General had to say about this shooting. It says that a Kentucky ballistic report raises questions about the state prosecutors' version of the police shooting death of Breonna Taylor, casting doubt on the claim that Taylor's boyfriend fired at police first and wounded one officer. And it goes on to say this. It says it goes on to say this. The Kentucky State Police said that due to limited markings of comparative value, the bullet that hit Manley was neither identified nor eliminated as coming from a 9mm pistol fired by Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. So they're saying that they don't know if the bullet came from Breonna Taylor's boyfriend's gun or not. That's what they're saying. And it goes on to say this: the ballistic report also contradicted Cameron's claim that the police only carried .40 caliber handguns. And that's something that this AG was talking about during his press statement. He was talking about how the police only carried these .40 caliber handguns, and this bullet came from a 9mm. Trying to make it seem as if it was clear that Breonna Taylor's boyfriend shot this officer. And that was one of the points that, this guy, Charles Barkley, was raising in his statement. So we don't even know if that's true or not. So you have that, you have this dispute as to whether or not he was the one who shot this officer. Also, you have another thing. Even if you were to believe the police's story and that this brother was shooting at the police and, in defense because he didn't know who these people were, that doesn't justify the killing of Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor was not shooting at the police. Breonna Taylor was unarmed. She was innocent. And at the very least, the police officer's conduct here was reckless or negligent, because it's clear that Breonna Taylor wasn't shooting. So why was she the one killed by these police? If this AG wanted to vigorously pursue this matter, he could have charged those officers with manslaughter, either involuntary manslaughter or voluntary manslaughter, because this is an example of recklessness. That's what it is. So for those reasons, I dispute what they are saying. I dispute these statements made by Shaquille O'Neal, trying to say that this is a different situation. The fact of the matter is these police were reckless. They were at the very least negligent in shooting this unarmed woman in her home. And you had this no-knock warrant executed, which increased the risk for everybody involved, the police officers and the people that in the building, including Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend. And the fact that some judge signed off on some warrant alone doesn't justify the killing of this sister. And it's just a shame to see these black men, defending these cops, man. Cops that killed a black woman, killed his sister, an innocent black woman. So I just think that these brothers are dead wrong. And I think that what we need to have is a release of the transcripts as the family has been demanded, so that we can know what was said during that grand jury testimony and hearing, so that we can know what kind of evidence was presented. More likely than not, this prosecutor was not even trying to prosecute these police. More likely than not, he was trying to get them exonerated, trying to make it easy so that they could walk. That's what probably happened. And we need the transcript so that we can know exactly what happened in this situation. So yeah, I take issue with this suggestion that somehow this woman's death is different from these other deaths. At the end of the day, here you have another innocent, unarmed black person killed by these police. And it's time for us to continue to demand justice for this sister. These brothers had these they have a large platform. Like, they're on this sports program where they're reaching millions of people. And instead of using that opportunity to demand justice for this sister, they are using it to justify the killing of this sister, even though they're saying, oh, they feel so sorry for her, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, they're basically making excuses for these pigs that killed this sister. It's like, not only do you have this Uncle Ruckus attorney general allowing these pigs to get away with killing this sister, you had these brothers basically killing her again with these words, justifying, this killing of this sister, man. So yeah, so that's what I have to say about them, man. I just think that they need to get better informed about this case. And I'm going to go to your comments in a second before I move on to my response to the brother Hassan Campbell. Also, another thing needs to be pointed out. I'm going to share this with you. I saw this on Democracy Now! They showed this video footage following the shooting of Breonna Taylor. And it raises questions about a cover-up. Because here you have one of the detectives that was a part of this shooting still lurking around the crime scene after this sister is killed, after the scene is supposed to be roped off so they can gather evidence. You had this guy that participated in this shooting lurking around. And I'm just going to read a couple of excerpts from this article. It goes on to say that Vice News obtained body camera footage from the Louisville Metro Police Department officers. And it shows, from the night of the raid, it raises questions about the investigation. It goes on to say the clip shows former Detective Brett Hankinson, one of the three officers who fired their guns, and the only one now facing charges. He's charged with first-degree wanton endangerment for gunshots that didn't even hit Breonna Taylor's apartment. But in the footage, you can see Hankinson entering Taylor's apartment while investigators are there examining the crime scene. And it goes on to say, at one point in the footage, Hankinson asked about a shell casing on the ground, saying, that's theirs, asking a question. This goes on to say the video footage also shows Detective Hankinson lingering in Taylor's apartment, even after he is told to leave the scene of the active investigation of an officer involved shooting. And this goes on to talk about the ballistics, as I mentioned before, saying that the Kentucky State Police were unable to determine that Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, shot Officer Jonathan Mattingly. And, Walker says that he fired a warning shot at the front door because he believed that it was a home invasion. So I'll post links to these articles in the description box so that you all can read them for yourself. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But yeah, it's just a shame that you had these brothers essentially making excuses for these police officers who killed this unarmed Black woman in her home. And you have a warrant that was based on some trumped up charges. And the fact that you had these police or prosecute, I think it was the prosecution, they tried to go to Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend, as I've said in a couple of other videos, to try to get him to falsely say that Breonna Taylor had something to do with this drug ring. And he denied that stuff when he could have got a lighter sentence. Instead of lying on this sister, he stuck to the truth. And again, the police found no evidence of this drug dealing and all that kind of stuff going on. So yeah, I mean, this is a horrible tragedy. Charges should have been filed against those officers who killed her. And again, it's just a shame that you had these brothers out here caping for these police. The same police that had no problem killing Black people and harassing Black people. And also, I want to briefly talk about like this whole issue of defunding the police, because that was something that Charles Barkley raised as well. So let me try to pull up that article. I mean, there was another article related to the same particular broadcast on the sports program. So let me try to pull that up for you, because I want to deal with that issue of defunding the police. I've done prior videos on it. Let me see if I can find this article real quick, and then I'll get into I'll talk about this whole Hassan Campbell video. Just bear with me a second. Just bear with me. I'm just looking up this. Okay, so here's the rest of what he had to say. So let me just share this real quick. And I'm referring to Charles Barkley. Yeah, so Charles Barkley also criticized this concept of defunding the police. He said, who are Black people supposed to call Ghostbusters when we have crime in our neighborhood? We need to stop the defund or abolish the police crap. And then he goes on to, he makes other statements. But in response to that, like, you know, in this article, they talk about this whole defund the police, and they explain the situation with defunding the police. Um, and the thing that I'll say about this, like, just to be clear on my position, like, I understand where people are coming from. Like, initially, you know, I had an adverse response to this whole defund the police, but I get what they're saying. You know, they're talking about, um, you know, dealing with crime in other ways than pouring money into police departments. Um, and I will go further to explain this, but I don't think that that slogan is the best slogan in the world. I think that it sends the wrong message and it's easy to be misinterpreted. And that's why you have people making statements like Charles Barkley about this whole defund the police. And that's why it's easy for Donald Trump to co opt that slogan and use it against Democrats and stuff like that, and use it to attack the movement, because it's an open-ended type of slogan that's ambiguous and subject to multiple interpretations. And you do have, you know, extremists that are talking about really, you know, getting rid of the police, period, and, you know, substantially cutting funding for police departments at a time when you have communities plagued by violence. So I get like why some people have some kind of hostility towards this idea of defunding the police, or over simplistic view of defunding the police. But just so that people can understand, it's not as simple as, oh, we're going to just shut down the police and that's the end of the police. It's more complicated than that. Basically, what you have is a situation of people reassessing the police and deciding what functions are appropriate for the police and what functions shouldn't police be involved in. You know, because right now police do everything. They're overextended. They're forced, you know, they're acting as counselors, you know, dealing with mental health issues in the community, dealing with domestic violence, and all kinds of different services that could be handled by other agencies that are more suited to deal with those problems. So that's one thing. And then also you have the question of funding. Like, if you pour all the funding into the police, that's not addressing the root causes of crime in communities. Like, a lot of communities have a lot of things that are feeding crime. Like, when you have failing schools, schools that aren't adequately funded, you're going to have more crime. When you have a lack of jobs and opportunity, you're going to have more crime. So if you put more funds into education and make sure that schools are accountable to families and students, then you're going to have better outcomes. If you have more resources dedicated to giving young people opportunities to higher education and jobs and vocational programs, you're going to have less crime. Like in Baltimore, we pour all these millions upon millions of dollars into law enforcement, but our communities are still not safe. So we need to look at it from a multifaceted approach. And I think I understand this whole defund the police. I don't think that that's the best slogan in the world, but I get it. I understand it. And I think that too often people have oversimplified the slogan and misunderstood what it's about. And that's what you have with Charles Barkley. And part of that is because of the movement not using the best and more calculated and intelligent type of rhetoric. So you have this situation where they're able to exploit it. So yeah, I'm going to go to your comments before I get into this audio from Hassan Campbell that I want to respond to. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. Shout out to everybody in the chat. So I'm going to look through your comments. Yeah, so Gorgeous G said Barkley and Shaquille both have an agenda. I can't see them being that ignorant. Yeah, I think a lot of these people do have an agenda. Like, I think that, you know, somebody like Charles Barkley, you know, this is not the first time he said something like this. He's on record saying all kinds of things. You know, I have videos on my I Declare War channel criticizing various things that he said. a lot of these people get rewarded and they get recognized and all that kind of stuff when they say these kind of things. So just as much as you have black people speaking out against these people, you're going to also have a lot of white people saying that they agree with Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah, so Sean said that he read that Brianna was naked and shot 8 times. Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read anything about her not having clothes on or anything like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. I mean, because if somebody has no clothes on, like where are they hiding a gun? Like, why are you shooting at them? Um, this is just absolutely outrageous, and I'm sickened. I'm disgusted that you had these cops basically getting away with killing this woman. So Eddie White says, I have no respect for Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley. So this person asked, why am I saying that they didn't announce themselves when there's witnesses that said they did? As I said before, there's only one witness saying that the police announced themselves. There are several witnesses that said that the police did not announce themselves. And in fact, this particular witness that the prosecution is relying on changed his story. This witness changed his story. Like at one point, he was saying that that they did not announce themselves. Then he changed his story, and I'm going to try to see if I can find that article. If you can bear with me a second. It may be in the article that I showed earlier. Let me see. Yeah, let me try to Google it because I know that. Just bear with me a second. So the bottom line is this: like, even if okay, so here it is. This is one story right here. Just bear with me a second. Okay. All right. So let me pull this up so you all can see it. Okay. So this is the Courier Journal, and it says nearly a week ago, Attorney General Cameron declared that the Louisville Metro Police knocked and announced themselves before breaking down Breonna Taylor's apartment door during an attempted search that ended in her death. And he goes on to say that the officers at the scene told investigators that they identified themselves as police, and one of the neighbors said he heard them do it. But then it goes on to say this, but Cameron left something out, that the same witness previously said the exact opposite. It says that witness said no, nobody identified themselves. So that's another reason why we need to have these transcripts from this grand jury hearing. And then you have all these other witnesses saying that they didn't hear the police identify themselves. It goes on to say this. It said the New York Times found almost a dozen neighbors who didn't hear the police announce. And it goes on to say this. Vice News also reported interviewing more than a dozen other neighbors who didn't hear the police. So that's why I'm saying that they didn't hear, that the police didn't announce themselves. That's why I'm making that statement. Because you got the one witness that they're relying on changing his story. And my question is, like, did they pay this guy to change his story? So that's why I'm saying that. And T-Boy said that Barkley should have kept his mouth shut. Exactly, man. Like there have been some cases of these police brutality cases where, like where even if it's a situation where I'm like, hey, that's not even a case of police brutality or whatever. If I feel that way, I just keep it to myself. If it's a case that I don't feel like is a case that warrants advocacy, I just don't publicly advocate for it. But I'm not going to tear down somebody or, say that they got what they deserved. And I'm not saying that they said that here, but essentially they're justifying the police, even though they're expressing sorrow for the woman's, the loss of Breonna Taylor. They're still basically trying to justify what these pigs did. Yeah, so let me see. Okay. Yeah, so I said what I had to say about that. So what I'm going to do is play this audio from Hassan Campbell, and I'm going to respond to the things that he's saying throughout this video. So this may be a minute. Like, hopefully it won't be too long. His video is about, I think it's like 15 minutes long. But when I listened to this video, I'm just like, before I even get started, like, there are some things that I agree with Hassan Campbell on just in general. When I watch his content, there's some subjects that I agree with him on, and there are some subjects that I don't agree with him on. And this is one of those subjects that I disagree with him on. And it's no disrespect. I just disagree with his position. And so let me find his video. And I'm going to play segments of it and respond to it. Hopefully this won't be too long. So just bear with me. I'm going to wait till I can. Okay, so I'm going to play the audio from Hassan Campbell right now. And for some sections of it, I'm not going to reiterate the points that I made before. I just want to respond to the new things that he said. So I'm not going to reiterate why this case is not different from, these other cases of police brutality. Again, this is a situation where an unarmed person was killed by the police without justification. And that's all the similarity that you need in these situations. Unarmed sister killed by these police without any real justification. Even if you were to say that the police had a right to shoot at the boyfriend, which I question as well, that doesn't give them a right to shoot this innocent woman just because she was in the same apartment, in the same room with this guy. That's like saying that because the police have some suspect that's shooting at them, that gives them the right to shoot some innocent bystander that's in the area. And that's ridiculous. So let's play this audio.
We're going to start with that real quick, right? Let's talk about Breonna Taylor. First and foremost, let me say rest in peace to that sister. She died a tragic death. But I'm not going to be swayed by the media or Black Lives Don't Matter. Her situation, her death was a complicated one. You got a no-knock warrant, which, let me say this, I think should be illegal. If the police want to come in anybody's home to lock them up, I think they need to knock on the door, make themselves known, because it's very dangerous and you put people back against the wall. If I hear somebody kicking through my door, automatically, I'm going to do like her boyfriend did. I want to.
Yeah, so we agree on the issue of the no-knock warrant. And I think, just about everybody agrees that should be gotten rid of. As I mentioned before, Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley mentioned that. So on that issue, we agree.
Respond. If I have a registered firearm, I'm going to fire. Your job is to protect your home. You got a woman in there. You might have kids in there. So let me say that. But on the flip side, not saying I agree with what the police did because I wasn't there. I can't really get upset because the police exchange fire, because that's what you do in a shootout. When somebody shoots, you shoot back. That's what you do. You're not going to sit up there and say, wait, hold up. Bullets is flying already. Dogs already hit a police officer, right?
So the question, he's raising this point about somebody shooting at you, you shoot at them. But the question is not just about shooting back at somebody. It's about taking into consideration the risk to innocent life, taking that into account. You don't just, if somebody's in a room with, children or some other innocent bystanders and stuff like that, you're not going to risk killing them shooting at somebody. You're going to take precautions to avoid that kind of situation. And these police failed to do so here. So that's recklessness. At the very least, that's negligence, and they should be held accountable for that.
So I got to be fair. I can't say that I'm all the way mad at the police for defending themselves. What I am mad at is the fact that the laws need to be changed with the police. And I respect the movement for aiming to change their law. Yes, the law needs to be changed. I support and I back that. But what I'm saying is, in Breonna Taylor's case with the police, I think it's iffy. I think I could understand why the police didn't get fired. I could understand that. I'm just being fair. Am I siding with the police? Hell no.
So he said, I'm just being fair. Am I siding with the police? Hell no. After saying that he can understand why they weren't fired. After basically suggesting that he can understand why no charges were filed against them. The fact of the matter is you are siding with the police, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. When you defend what they did to that sister and you justify it and you say that they shouldn't get fired, you are on the side of the police. You are defending the police.
I think the real problem in this situation is the laws need to be changed, like I said once again. Second, I noticed that all of these rappers, actors, and paid politicians are trying to get you to vote for the Democratic Party, right? The Democratic Party is the same party that was responsible for the laws that allowed the police to go in the house to kill Breonna Taylor. Hello? That's first off. The Democratic Party is what Black Lives Matter is pushing you to vote for. This is the same party that sat back for all of these years and never said anything about black on black crime. I mean, not black on black crime, police brutality to black people.
So I want to respond to a couple of those things. Like, first of all, laws like the no knock and all that kind of stuff, those laws were passed due to Democrats and Republicans. Both Democrats and Republicans helped pass these kinds of laws. So you can't just put it on one party or the other, in terms of like the new Jim Crow and mass incarceration. We know that both parties had something to do with the passage of, these laws that have like ramped up the war on drugs, that have resulted in the deaths of innocent, people, and people being locked up, nonviolent offenders being locked up indefinitely. So there's plenty of blame to go around. But when he talks, he also talked about how Democrats have done nothing to address this problem of police brutality. And I'm going to deal with that. Like, I'm going to get into that, like, after I play his statements that he makes about Barack Obama and Donald Trump.
I think we had more deaths under Barack Obama than the black president. Now, mind you, right? I want y'all to think about this, because this is things that need to be said. I'm going to say it again. The Democratic Party has sat back and watched police execute black people on a regular.
Okay, so, he's saying that the Democratic Party sat back and watched police execute black people on a regular. And he also said that more black people died under Obama, dealing with this police brutality situation. So there are a couple of things that have to be said about this. Number one, I don't even have the numbers yet. First of all, Obama was in office for 2 terms. So that's a longer time period than Donald Trump. So of course, there's going to be more things going on if you're in office for a longer period of time than another person. And also, like, being in office, like, just by being in the White House, just that in and of itself is not going to end police brutality all around the country. Like, a lot of people had this mistaken notion that once somebody gets elected, automatically they had a power over all police departments in the country and they can stop police brutality all at once. That notion is ridiculous. The notion that a president in and of himself can stop police brutality or has control over these police departments in all these cities around the country is just absurd. But when you look at, in terms of this question about whether or not Democrats sat down and watched these police kill black people, all you have to do is look at Obama's response to these situations of police brutality. He sent in his Justice Department to aggressively investigate these police departments. Aggressively investigate police departments in Baltimore, Ferguson, and other places. And these police departments, after, doing these investigations, after being thoroughly investigated by the Justice Department, they were exposed for racism within these police departments. And the Obama administration entered consent decrees to fundamentally change these police departments. Baltimore today is under a consent decree. And because of that consent decree, the Baltimore Police Department is having to implement various reforms to address excessive use of force, to address racial profiling. So the notion that Obama did nothing or Democrats did nothing is just false on its face. When you have all these investigations that took place, all of these consent decrees that have been entered to address police brutality, and even though Obama wasn't as vocal as I would have liked him to be on these issues, Obama did speak out on these issues of police brutality. He spoke out in the Trayvon Martin case, talking about how if he had a son, he would look like Trayvon, he would be like Trayvon. He talked about these things, and he was heavily criticized for doing so. He talked about police issues, And more importantly than talking about it, he sent out the Justice Department to thoroughly investigate these police departments. So the notion that Obama and the Democrats did nothing to address police brutality is ridiculous. It's the Democrats right now that are pushing for the Racial Justice Act, the George Floyd Act. When you look at how the parties are responding to this situation, you see two starkly different reactions. And I'm going to get into that, after I play some more of this audio where he makes these statements in support of Donald Trump. I'm going to respond to that.
But Black Lives Matter, the rappers and the actors are trying to convince you to get Trump out of office, to put the politicians back in office that's been watching you be slaughtered for years and years and years.
Again, they haven't been just watching you be slaughtered. I cited example after example of what Obama did to try to address police brutality, far more than Donald Trump would ever do if he's given a second term. I'm going to go into that in more detail.
The Democratic Party has sat back and watched black people get slaughtered mercilessly. So it confuses me when I sit back and watch rappers, actors, and Black Lives Matter convince you to go vote for to put the same party back in power that's been watching us shed blood, sweat, and tears throughout the years. Am I making any sense? Or do I got to slow down for some of y'all to catch up? Now,
hold on 1 second.
Once again, I need for you people to make me understand, how is it that a drug dealer, alleged, from what people are saying out there where Breonna Taylor lives at, her and her man was into selling heavy drugs. Do I know this for a fact? No. Do I want?
So there you got him like citing some stuff that he doesn't know for a fact, talking about Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend were selling heavy drugs. First of all, there's been no proof of this. And even he acknowledges that he don't have no facts to back that up. But yet he's spreading this lie out here. And it's not even her current boyfriend. There are no allegations of him selling drugs. It's an ex-boyfriend that she doesn't even live with. They're trying to say that she was connected to some drug enterprise involving the ex-boyfriend. But there's no proof of this. You have the boyfriend denying that. You have, no evidence found during this raid. They didn't find any drug paraphernalia, any drugs or any of that stuff. So this is just speculation. It's like, why are we doing their job for them? Why are we participating in tarnishing this sister's name and all that kind of stuff and defending police that don't give a damn about us? How do you look as a black man defending the police in this situation? Especially Hassan Campbell. Like, he had a video the other day where he's showing the police coming to his house and stuff like that, suggesting that they were harassing him. But here he is finding himself defending these same police.
Want that sister to rest in peace? Yes. So the police had reason to go to this grown man, grown woman house. May she rest in peace. And I hope she get her justice, even though I think it's, like I said, it's iffy. Her boyfriend shot first. Now, maybe if he would have emptied the clip out, she would still be alive. Sarcasm. But anyway, I need for you people to help me understand, and I'll be in the comment section. How is it that Black Lives Matter is going so crazy about Breonna Taylor, but don't have nothing to say about all these children being slaughtered?
Okay, so I want to address that. Like, it's the whole black on black violence versus police brutality talking point that you hear all the time. People bring this up, and basically it's a deflection. Like, they get you talking about something that has absolutely nothing to do with the issue at hand. It's a classic example of a red herring. And that's what it is. It's to get you off track and have you talking about some inner city violence issue when the issue is police brutality. The issue is police brutality. You had these police that kill Black people with impunity. They kill Black people and get away with it. You know, they kill Black people and there are no charges against these officers. And when there are charges, they walk too often. And these are the people who are supposed to be, quote unquote, protecting and serving the community. But instead of doing that, too often they are brutalizing people and killing people. So that is why you have a group like Black Lives Matter speaking out against, these police officers and against police brutality. That's why you have it. If you're in an inner city violence type of situation where you have some gang member kill somebody, if they identify the killer, if they have people that testify against that killer, guess what? That killer is going to jail. That killer is going to be punished for his crime. Those are two separate issues. There are groups that deal with police brutality, and there are other organizations, for instance, that deal with inner city violence, that deal with calling for peace in the neighborhoods and all that kind of stuff. You can have organizations that specialize in different things. But to make it seem as if Black Lives Matter has to be focused on dealing with inner city violence, I just think that that's misplaced. They can address the issue of police brutality and focus on that issue. You have other organizations that deal with the community violence. Like, for instance, here in Baltimore, we have groups like Ceasefire. We have groups like No Shoot Zone. And, there was the 300 Men. And you have similar groups all around the country dealing with that. So let's get rid of this false narrative that Black people don't care about inner city violence. And let's stop trying to make an organization like Black Lives Matter into what you want it to be. You're trying to make it into another one of these community groups that focuses on inner city violence. And I'm not saying that inner city violence is not important. Of course, that's a very important issue. I care about that issue. I've done plenty of videos on that issue. But let's stop throwing this red herring out here as if you have to choose between these issues, as if to say, well, you can't advocate for police brutality and not focus on, inner city violence. Again, it's just a red herring. It's a distraction. It's a deflection.
Just yesterday, an 8-year-old boy, somebody kicked in the door in Patterson Projects in the Bronx, Mount Haven section of the Bronx, kicked in the project door and shot an 8-year-old and left. I sat back and waited before I touched this story. These cats said absolutely nothing. Black Lives Matter had nothing to say. And as a matter of fact, once again, my son and Tamika Mallory both live in the Bronx. They're from the Bronx. How is it that so many women and children are getting hit by stray bullets? And these activists who are crying for justice and crying because of the injustice that's going on by the police on us as a people, if you for the people, you don't select and pick and choose who you're going to cry over. Because me, like I said, I'm going to say this again.
And I know for a fact, like, that my son and Tamika Mallory have done some issues around this inner city violence piece. So I just think that he's presenting a false narrative. It's not a full story. It's a distortion of what's actually going on.
Because I want y'all to understand. If I fall in a river and I'm on a boat and I got my little Aaliyah with me or one of my children with me, I want you to go jump in and save my child, not me. Get my baby first. Then come get me. Breonna Taylor is a grown-ass woman. May she rest in peace. George Floyd is a grown man. May he rest in peace if he's dead. But these babies that's getting shot, you're going to tell me that these activists, these paid activists, they paid, their hotel stays is paid, sponsor for. You see Tamika Mallory and my son in those different states, the hotels are being paid.
I mean, like, so what? Their hotels are being paid. I mean, like, again, I mean, this is another example of these conspiracy theories. Like, he's going to say, you know, this guy, George Soros is controlling these people and blah, blah, blah. So what? Their hotels are paid for. So who cares? I mean, if we look at the civil rights movement, people like Martin Luther King and a lot of those activists, they had to have, you know, to be paid. They were paid for their hotel stay and all that kind of stuff to go to different places. Their travel was paid so that they could travel down, you know, to different places to fight for civil rights and all that kind of stuff. Who cares if somebody is getting a salary or they're, you know, they have pay for hotel stay and all that kind of stuff? That's the only way that you would be able to have a group of people to advocate 24/7 for an issue. That's the only way you will have these people able to stay in Louisville for such a long time demanding justice for this sister. If you have, you know, funds for hotels and all that kind of stuff, funds to pay for various expenses and stuff. Freedom is not free. It costs money. And we know with, you know, from every civil rights organization that was involved in the civil rights movement, they had paid staff, they had, you know, expenses for hotels and other expenses that they needed while they were traveling. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a part of the movement. That's what the movement has always done. You know, like people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and all these other people, Medgar Evers, they were paid, given funds to travel and all that kind of stuff to carry out the work for the movement. And I just find it like disappointing to see these armchair people that aren't really engaged in any kind of demonstration criticizing people like Tamika Mallory or My Son, who are on the front lines of this struggle, who are on the front lines protesting, organizing volunteers, and risking their safety and their lives and their freedom to make a difference in cases like this. I don't have respect for people that criticize real activists, people that are actually putting in this work. And somebody like like Tamika Mallory, she's been a lifelong advocate for Black people, a lifelong activist. First with the National Action Network for all those years, for like 12 or 13 something years, 14 years, and then with this new organization. So it's like, I just don't have patience for this stuff. It's like, why are you criticizing an organization because they're able to pay for people's hotel stay or to pay for people's expenses? When you have rich, you know, people like Oprah Winfrey donating and supporting these kind of causes, you're going to have a situation where people are able to get a salary or able to have hotel expenses paid for and stuff like that. And that's the way it should be. They should have their basic expenses done. Like, this stuff isn't free. It's not free to travel across the country and to stay somewhere for weeks on end fighting for justice. That's not free. So why are we criticizing somebody for receiving funds to make it possible to advocate for our people?
By George Soros and his people. When you see them on the plane, hotels, food, luxury, their battle has been selected for them to argue on behalf of that dead person.
So, I mean, and then this is this conspiracy mumble jumble, like, oh, you know, George Soros is funding this. This guy is saying that George Soros is funding this whole thing, you know, funding Tamika Mallory and My Son and all that kind of stuff, and he's controlling it and blah, blah, blah. I mean, a lot of these people, they promote this victimhood narrative where Black people are helpless and somebody else is controlling everything. They constantly promote this narrative. He says all this stuff without any kind of proof at all that Tamika Mallory is getting funds from Soros, without any proof at all that My Son is getting funds from George Soros without any proof at all that this particular organization is getting funding from George Soros. And why would somebody complain about somebody getting funding to advocate for a sister that was killed by these police without justification? Why would somebody be complaining about that?
And they're paid to argue and protest on behalf of these people. So you're going to tell me you're going to keep protesting for grown people, but not the children that's being slaughtered in the hood, not the women? Yo, I swear by Almighty God, the best thing that ever happened to us as a people was this pandemic. Us being locked up, it was the...
Now, he said the best thing that ever happened to Black people is this pandemic. And then he goes on to talk about like how when people were locked up, they couldn't commit crimes and all that kind of stuff. The pandemic is not the best thing that happened to Black people. Like how can anybody that's rational say something like this when Black people are disproportionately dying from this pandemic? When you have all these Black people, thousands of Black people who have lost their lives from this pandemic, far more that have lost their lives than from this inner city violence that people want to pretend to be so concerned about. Far more people died from this virus, but yet he's going to say that this is the best thing that ever happened to Black people. To me, that makes no sense on his face. And it's like this, one thing you got to understand is like the same people pushing this whole George Soros conspiracy. These are the same right-wing nuts that support Donald Trump. These are the same bigoted, racist people that don't have no love or respect for Black people. You know, people like your Alex Joneses and all these other right-wing, pro-Trump, conservative wackos that say this kind of stuff. So let me keep playing this audio. I'm trying to keep this relatively short.
The best thing that ever happened. Because we were stuck in a house and the crime rate went down. And as soon as they let us back out to play, well, we started playing with them toys. And all you've seen all over the news is the high spiked up crime rate. So I'm supposed to believe that these passionate poetry speaking, they so poetic when they're in front of the news. So heroic when they getting locked up posing for the camera. I'm supposed to believe that these people really believe about these. They really love and care about the struggle of us when they are overlooking so many tragedies with so many babies being overlooked. So many missing children.
Yeah, so I already addressed the Black on Black versus police brutality thing, so I'm not going to respond to that, but I'm going to wait till he gets to this point about Donald Trump, and then I'll respond.
Be found. Some of them are actually being found. These people are not saying nothing about none of this. What are you trying to say, Hassan Campbell? I'm saying the whole movement is full of shit. Now, don't get me wrong. There is people that seeing the marches going on, and they're passionate about it, and they're sincere with it. But the paid activists that's leading it, they're full of it. And y'all falling for an agenda that's leading you it's leading you astray into a burning house, and y'all still don't get it. So they just gonna sit back and ignore the high crime rate, the death rate that's going on in the hood. But they're gonna tell you once the bad come, they're gonna secure the budget, and then they're gonna have the gangs, the same people that's tearing the hood up. They're gonna pay them to protect it. I think I'd rather stick with the police. Because, after all, that's like extorting yourself. You're going to pay the same people to do the same thing that they're already doing? Well,
he said he'd rather stick with the police, the same police that are killing Black people every other day, the same police that are harassing Black people, beating Black people, getting away with murdering Black people. These are the people that he would rather be with. But let me continue.
I'll tell you what, the streets in Black America, we doing each other dirtier than the police. The police got to catch up to what we doing to each other in the hood. Now,
hello.
Hold on one second.
This election is the most important election that we're going to have in America.
He's right about that. It's an important election, but he's going to go left with things, or let me say, go right with things. And I got to respond to this. I can't wait.
I think y'all better open up your eyes and see things for what it really is and not what it appears to be. This election is going to be the most important election we have. And if you really sit back and you pay, when you sit back and you really pay attention to what's going on, you can sit back and you can actually see how these celebrities are popping out, swaying you to vote for the Democratic Party. And it's disgusting because, like I said, we've been under their foot. The Democratic Party had their foot in our neck for decades. As long as I've been alive, nothing has ever changed for Black people.
I mean, this notion, I mean, I could go on and on. Like he said, nothing has ever changed for Black people. My question is, like, are we in physical change right now? Are we still being sold into bondage right now? Like literally, I'm not talking about like some analogy dealing with the criminal justice system, but are we being sold? Are we being raped and stuff like that? Are we subjected to chattel slavery right now? Of course not. Are we still living under, overt de facto and de jure segregation in this country, where you had signs that say no colored people and all that kind of stuff? Are we still in a situation where we're sitting in the back of the bus? Of course not. Are we still in a situation where you have, aside from the police violence that we see, are we still in a situation where somebody can be lynched for looking at a white woman or whistling at a white woman and no justice happened? Things have changed. I mean, are we still in a situation where you have where it's very few Black people are able to get a college education, where you have no Black elected officials? We're not in the same situation. And it's like, I'm tired of hearing people put out this false, exaggerated narrative that nothing has changed for Black people, that we're still in the same boat as we were before. Is there enough progress? Of course not. But let's not pretend like there hasn't been any kind of change at all in our community or among Black people, because it's just simply not true. Like, it's simply not factual. Like, when you look at every kind of indicator, the number of people educated, the number of Black elected officials, the numbers of Black people that have businesses and all that kind of stuff, there is some progress in our community when you compare things. It's not enough progress. There's far more progress to come, but let's not play and exaggerate by saying that things are basically the same.
Under Trump, he's done more for Black people than anybody in America.
So this guy actually had the nerve to say that Trump has done more for Black people than anybody in America. That's what he had the nerve to fix his mouth to say. Donald Trump has done more for anybody in America, more for Black people than anybody in America. That is by far like the most outlandish thing that I've heard in a long time. And my question is, what has he done for us that stands out far more than anything that anybody else has ever done for us? Donald Trump has done more to us than a lot of these people that have been elected, more against us than a lot of these people that have been elected. He's done things like attack affirmative action, using his Justice Department to attack affirmative action. He's done more to suppress the black vote. He's done absolutely nothing about police brutality. As I've said time and time again, his spokespeople said that police brutality was some local issue, that it wasn't an issue for the federal government. This is a man who, when he took office, he asked his Justice Department basically not to use these consent decrees to change the police, to address these fundamental problems. That's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the one who defended that kid that was killing those protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Donald Trump is the one who defended that family. You know, he had that family, that man and that woman that pointed guns at protesters. He had them speak at the Republican National Convention. This is the man that you say has done more for black people when he's celebrating a couple that pointed guns at black people. This is the man that you say has done more for black people, a man that defended those white supremacists in Charlottesville by saying that there's some very fine people on both sides. This is the man you're talking about? The man who basically said that he was going to prevent affordable housing from being built in suburban areas, basically trying to keep black people out. This is the man that you say has done more for black America. A man that was sued twice by the Justice Department for housing discrimination. That's the man that you claim has done so much for black America. That's the man you're claiming? The man who called for the death penalty against those brothers who were falsely accused in the Central Park rape situation? That's the man that you're saying has done more for black people than anybody else. A man who talked about how black people are too stupid to vote for him, according to his own attorney. That's the man that you're saying has done more for black people than anybody else. That's the man that you're supporting. A man who referred to Africa, to a whole continent, as a place of shithole countries. A man who called Haiti, a shithole country. A man who referred to the people who are protesting against police brutality, referred to them as sons of bitches. That's the man that you're claiming has done more for black America than anybody else. That's the man you claiming has done so much for black people. A man that's taken away programs that benefit black people, like housing assistance, like food assistance. A man that's trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, a program that made it possible for many black people who were, who did not have health insurance to have health insurance. That's the man that you claim is doing more for black people. That's the man that you're touting and vouching for and celebrating. So let me finish playing this audio. I could keep going, but I won't. I think y'all get the point.
And because social media told you to hate him, before Trump became president of America, every celebrity was taking pictures with him, hanging out with him, partying him. They was best friends with him. And then as soon as he become president, y'all let the white media convince you not to like Trump.
So he's talking about the white media convincing people not to like Trump. All you have to do is look at Trump's track record. That should be enough to tell you everything you need to know. It's not about some quote unquote white media making people believe certain things. And, you know, he mentioned these celebrities hanging out with Donald Trump and all that kind of stuff. The fact of the matter is, when those people were hanging out with him, they didn't know nothing about his political agenda. A lot of people were hanging out with him because they liked being associated with wealth and power. That's how they perceived him, as somebody who's wealthy and powerful, and they wanted to be associated with that. Like they would talk about being rich like Donald Trump and this and that. So it was about celebrating the image of wealth and all that kind of stuff. That's why these people were around him, and they, were, seen in these pictures with him and stuff like that. They didn't know nothing about his politics. They didn't know the political Trump and his belief system and all that kind of stuff at the time when they were hanging out with him and stuff. You know, this is a man who popularized, like he's one of the people, like he launched his political career by pandering to white racists, by, attacking immigrants and stuff like that, by talking about building a wall, by talking about, Mexicans are criminals and all that kind of stuff, by talking about birtherism, suggesting that the first Black president wasn't from America and all that kind of stuff. When people learned about these types of views, their opinions of Donald Trump changed. So I'm going to play a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to conclude.
Y'all let the white media convince you not to like Trump, a man that was loved by Black people until he became president. But the one thing that y'all not looking at is, when in the history of America have you ever seen white people turn on a white person in the media?
I mean, that statement is so ridiculous. He said, when have you seen the white media turned on a white person in the media? You see it every single day. I mean, there are plenty of people that are white that have been roundly condemned in the media. This is not some special situation. Like, I mean, what is he talking about? There are plenty of white people that have been criticized in the media for this thing and for that thing and all that kind of stuff. This is not something unique to Donald Trump. And it's just a shame that somebody's painting this guy, Donald Trump, as if he's some kind of victim of, some kind of conspiracy and stuff. When this guy is a racist, and he's the last person that Black people need to be supporting, especially somebody who purports to be so concerned about the plight of Black people.
I'm going to say it again. When have you ever in the history of America seen white people slander and try to destroy the image of a white person the way that they did Trump?
I mean, you see it all, again, you've seen it with Bill Clinton, with the Monica Lewinsky thing. You've seen it with Richard Nixon and all that kind of stuff. You've seen it with Weinstein, like how he was this person who was like celebrated in the media and all that kind of stuff, and then they turned on him. There are so many examples of white people being condemned in white media. It's just ridiculous. I mean, there are plenty of them. So it's like, what is he talking about? So yeah, I'm not going to play any more of this. I will post a link to his video in the description box when I get a chance to, so you all could check it out and, listen to it for yourself. But those are my thoughts. I just think that it's a shame that you had these Black men justifying what these pigs did to this sister, killing this sister without any kind of justification at all. Like an innocent, unarmed Black woman killed by these police. They were negligent, they were reckless, and they should be held accountable for what they did. There's another case of a Black person being killed by these police. And although there are some factual differences, at the end of the day, it's a similar situation, and we should be demanding justice for this sister. One of the main things that we need to be pushing for is a release of those grand jury transcripts, as the family has been demanded. And one thing that he suggests in his video is that oh, she got paid 12 million, the family got paid $12 million and, that's some kind of justice. It's a step in the right direction without a doubt. But at the end of the day, that's not a lot of money at all. $12 million is not a lot of money for the loss of your loved one, especially when you do the math on it. When you consider that the attorneys are going to at least get a third of that. So that leaves like $8 million. And then when you look at taxes getting their cut, which is probably like half, you're looking at like $4 million. And then when you divide that up among the family, that is not a lot of money at all for the loss of your loved one. That is not justice. Justice is those police officers being punished for killing the sister. So those are my thoughts. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Shout out to everybody in the chat room. I appreciate you tuning in. And tell me what you think about this situation. Do you think Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal and Hassan Campbell are right about this situation? Why not? Peace and blessings, everyone. Have a good evening. And I'll see you on the next live stream. Peace.